You are all pure devotees. That's the best news of the day. Okay, we're going to continue. We are going to continue. And Krishna Karshini mentioned something that when you make a comment here in the chat, it doesn't go to Facebook, which means less people see it on Facebook. Is it possible to be open in two places at once and make the comment, like one on your phone and one on your, you can go to Facebook on your phone and Zoom on your computer, right?
Yeah, it's possible.
You can make your comments on Facebook. Okay, I have the document open, but I don't remember where we left off. I just have to,
The last thing that we read was a letter, October 13th, 1968, and the next one should be a letter February 4th,
Okay.
1971.
Okay, all right. So we'll do a little kirtan, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit about a little bit of ISKCON history, just because I think some people who are listening to this class, or maybe even you, might be thinking, wait a minute, Prabhupada's a pure devotee, and nobody can imitate him. And if I come along and say, I'm a pure devotee, that definitely seems to be imitation. So, and some devotees actually said that, and it created all kinds of problems. So I'm telling you, you're pure devotees, then I'm telling you, you can't tell anybody you're pure devotee because it'll create a problem. So I want to talk about that. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jasodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Chishodhanandana Rajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Radha Madhava ki jai. Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Shamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sanyavari Paschati Dasatari Anshakapadurvyascha Kripashandavyavacha Putitanam Pavanimyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangulangayate Girim Kripatamaham Bande Shri Guru Dinataninam. I think last week, or maybe it was a few weeks ago, we told the story that Lord Chaitanya, I believe it was Varanasi, Benares. He came there. That was the seat of the Mayavadi school. And there were two devotees, Chandrasekhar and Tapan Mishra. And they told Mahaprabhu that, you know, you're not a traditional sannyasi from the viewpoint of the Mayavadis, so they're all criticizing you because they think you're not studying Vedanta. And the duty of a sannyasi is to study Vedanta, at least from the Mayavadi perspective. Of course, duty of a sannyasi is to be knowledgeable. So they said, can you talk to them? And Prabhupada said, they were Kanistha adhikaris. And one of the differences between Kanistha and Madhyam is the Madhyam can defeat philosophically, can explain and the philosophy well enough to defeat opposing elements, at least well enough to defeat reasonable people, at least well enough to reasonably defeat even if they don't admit it. And so Prabhupada said, if they were Kanistha, if they were Madhyam, they would have been able to defeat, but they were Kanistha. But Prabhupada said they were pure devotees. Whoa, things are getting more complicated now, right? I could say, oh, Tanya, I don't like you. You're a Kanistha. You know, it's like, how dare you say that, you Kanistha? Kanistha, just like the word Shudra, it can have a negative connotation. The word Kanistha can have a negative connotation. Kanistha, Madhyam, and Uttama. It just means first class, second class, third class. That's all it means. Uttama means top, Madhyam means middle. Uttama, topmost. Uttama adhikari. Madhyam means the middle, and Kanistha means beginning. So if you call someone a Kanistha, in a sense, you're just saying, you're just a beginner. It's not like an insult, so to speak. But here we see something interesting, right? Prabhupada said these two devotees were pure devotees, but they were Kanistha because they couldn't defeat. They couldn't defeat the Mayavadis, which is not that easy to defeat them. So they asked Lord Chaitanya, can you defeat them? And then Lord Chaitanya came, listened to them, spoke to them, was very humble with them, and then explained the ultimate end of Vedanta is bhakti, and they all became devotees. I don't know how many. Does anybody know how many? They're, the whole group, all the Mayavadis became devotees. So now we have pure devotees who are Kanistha adhikari. And you remember, we read some letters, or no, we haven't read some letters, but we're going to read some letters where Prabhupada is saying all my disciples are pure devotees because they'll do whatever I say. There was a dream a devotee had. And in the dream, it was something along the lines of that we are completely unqualified. But our only qualification is that we follow Prabhupada. We have faith in Prabhupada. And he said, I had this dream. And he said, is that true? And Prabhupada said, I don't remember exactly what he said, but Prabhupada said, yes, you're all unqualified. But because you have faith in me, that's the most important qualification. And that qualification alone, it will be your success. So that's why Prabhupada liked us. Otherwise you could say he didn't have any really good reason to like us because we were all not raised as in Vaishnav or Vedic culture. So we were full of bad qualities, Western training. But we had faith in Prabhupada. We had good hearts. We were willing to do what he said. We were willing to do it to please him. And he said, therefore, you're pure devotees. Interesting, right? Now, it's time for some ISKCON history, which some of you may know, some of you may vaguely know, some of you may have heard something about, and some of you may know virtually nothing. And I don't want to give you indigestion, but this is not always easy to stomach. And this is in relation to definitions of pure devotee. So, as you know, in Prabhupada stopped initiating, he asked his disciples to initiate on his behalf while he was alive, still making disciples for him. At one point, Prabhupada just completely retired. Debatable whether Prabhupada meant them to start initiating then or not, but that's not the point of this. So, right from the beginning, Prabhupada was always saying you should all become guru. He didn't say diksha, siksha. He just said you should become guru. That was there. You can read letters very early on, 1968, 1969. I won't be here for much longer. I've given you this knowledge, now you share it. So Prabhupada's idea of guru was, what you've learned from me, you share it, and what you've learned from me, you follow it, and then you can become guru. His concept of guru was not the same as him, as the acharya of a movement, because if we say, oh, I have to become a guru, I say, well, I can't do that, I'm not a world acharya. He wasn't thinking like that, because he said, well, all my sons and daughters, they should all, and children, he said also, obviously in the future, you should all become gurus, which again just means whatever I've told you, repeat it in your own words, according to your realization, and then live it, and you can become guru. So when Prabhupada, as the founder Acharya of ISKCON, obviously his position as guru was different. He wasn't just someone in ISKCON on the side. He was the Acharya, which means everything was coming from him. And so he had a very special position, obviously. Now, the understanding after Prabhupada left was that 11 people he asked to initiate on his behalf then would become gurus and would initiate their disciples. And so there was a misunderstanding at that point. And the misunderstanding was that unless you're a pure devotee, you can't be guru. Well, that's not really a misunderstanding, because that's everywhere in Prabhupada's books, right? The most advanced devotee becomes the guru. Guru is a pure devotee. So, that's like ABCs, right? You want to take shelter from somebody, you say. You want to make sure that they're purely serving. They're not going to try to cheat you. So our idea of pure devotee, of course, was Srila Prabhupada. And even though Prabhupada said all my disciples are pure devotees, it kind of just went in one ear out the other. It's like we didn't really think that. Although Prabhupada was speaking philosophically, you're pure devotees if you serve with a pure motive. And that is a definition. It's a siddhanta, it's a tattva, it's just true. But when you're in Prabhupada's presence and you use the word pure devotee, it's like, yeah, that's what we're talking about. That's a pure devotee. Yeah, Prabhu, you may be a pure devotee, but you're not Prabhupada. You couldn't do what Prabhupada did. None of us could, not you, none of us could. So there's this huge distinction, right? Obviously, for Prabhupada's coming, he's been a Vaishnava all his life. He's coming at the age of 70. We're becoming devotees, right? 1, 2, 3 years. I was 7 years and 10 months I'd been in the movement, then Prabhupada left. It was like the age of my grandfather, and huge gap, right? Huge difference. Still, even though I've been in Krishna consciousness 51 years, still huge difference. So everybody thought, not everybody, people thought, especially a lot of the gurus thought, to be a guru, you have to be a pure devotee. So when Prabhupada appointed us, he must have empowered us to become pure devotees. And so many of them and many of the devotees, this wasn't isolated, many of them and many of the devotees thought there was a special empowerment by Prabhupada, which elevated those devotees far, far above everybody else. And at that time, everybody else was God brothers and God sisters. Obviously, when aside from a few people who didn't get initiated by Prabhupada, which is only a few, when Prabhupada left, obviously, everyone was his disciples. That means we're all God brothers and God sisters. And so you leave, you know this God brother, right? You grew up with him. You lived in the same van with him. You had to wake him up when he was falling asleep during japa. You had to wake him up in the morning. You had to stop him from eating too many sweets because he loved gulab jamuns. You know him, you know his faults. And then, there's like no way this person is really any different than else of us. We all have the same problems. He's no different than any of us. Yeah, that's proper English. No different than any of us. And then Prabhupada leaves, and we all felt Prabhupada left too soon. Prabhupada leaves, it's too soon. And now these people, these 11, have to start taking disciples. So we don't really see them any different. I mean, they're advanced devotees. We see that, but we don't see a major difference. Some of them were sannyasis, yeah, more renounced, more knowledgeable, but not like light years different, right? So then there's this idea that now they've become pure devotees, like on a different level, in a different league, in a different universe, by special empowerment when Prabhupada said become Guru, because Guru must be this high, right? I don't know if you know the history, but the Gurus were worshipped on a similar level to Prabhupada. So they had Guru Puja every day because Prabhupada had Guru Puja every day. And all the facilities that Prabhupada had, not all, but many of them, they had because the idea was now that they're gurus, they basically have to follow in Prabhupada's footsteps, and we should honor them the way we honor Prabhupada. So now many, many of the God brothers are saying, no, nothing's really different. We respect you. We have no problem that you want to be guru. We have no problem that Prabhupada chose you rather than us. Most of us didn't want to be a guru. Most of us didn't feel we were that qualified. But some of them were saying, Prabhupada empowered us. We're in a different league. And it created huge problems. Now, those problems lasted about 9 years, more or less. And it hit a point where many of the devotees said, well, we have to straighten this out. This is not true. They can't be seen as, they're nice devotees, empowered devotees, but not in a different league than their God brothers and God sisters. So then what happened? Here's where that was a big problem. It was a big problem, especially some of them had difficulty in their spiritual life, which it's interesting. I'm sidetracking a little bit, but it's interesting because, as you can imagine, many God brothers are saying, well, no, this picture is wrong. And other people are saying, no, they're pure devotees. They're special. They're different. Prabhupada empowered them. And their disciples, of course, were seeing them as way, way, way up there. And then it so happened that one of them started taking LSD. And he called LSD the foot dust of Radharani, the dust of her feet. And one day he was in the temple and he was in front of the deities for 7 hours crying. Radha Krishna, Radha Krishna, 7 hours straight. So what do you think all the disciples thought? They thought, okay, these are ecstatic symptoms. They didn't know. But the God brothers are like, God sisters, like most of them are like, something is wrong here. Because, yesterday I was with him and, he was his normal self, which is basically like all of us. Nice devotee, yes. Sincere, yes. And today, symptoms of bhava, I don't think so. Something is fishy here. Something is not right. All the disciples are like, no, it's our Guru Maharaj. She's a pure devotee. So it was finally revealed that something was fishy. LSD. Okay. And then one by one, there's about 5 of them in this period of time, 79 to 86, that had some difficulty. So devotees are trying to say, no, you're nice devotees and pure devotee in the sense that we all are pure devotees, but not special. And then the gurus were thinking, but you can't say that because that would break the faith of the disciples. The disciples have to see their guru is, like Avatar, way, way up there. They have to see that. Otherwise, you're going to break their faith. So Krishna had to cause this one. I mean, I was there. I was right there because all the meetings were in LA and I lived in LA. And I was right there. In that year, I can think of 5 that had trouble, and I was personally working with 4 of them. So these eyes saw. These were people I was very close with. And so if we said anything, the gurus were very concerned that if you say something to denigrate us, then the disciples will lose faith. So if you say, well, we're just like you, we're not special, disciples will lose faith. You can't say we're not pure devotees, the disciples will lose faith. And we say, you're great, we appreciate you, but you're not like Prabhupada. You're not Madhyam-adhikari, Mahabhagavad. We couldn't say that because if we did, we would be deemed as envious. They were feeling we were envious of them and we were upsetting their disciples and they wouldn't want us in their zone. It was that bad, if you could imagine. I mean, you could kind of understand, we're all young and we didn't understand clearly, right? So by divine arrangement, you could say, or by will of providence, it's kind of the same thing, or just by the fact that they started out on the wrong foot and they were young and they misunderstood, which was easy to misunderstand. Some of them started having difficulty. So all of a sudden it was like, okay, we told you you're not up there and now you're even lower than we are. So, we have to straighten this out. So after that, it was straightened out. And the straightening out was that what we've been discussing the last few days, right? That pure devotee means someone who's purely serving. He doesn't have to be Uttama-adhikari. He doesn't have to be a devotee for 500 years like that. Then there were 2 problems that complicated this. The Ritvik came in. The Ritviks were saying, these people that thought they were appointed by Prabhupada could not have been appointed by Prabhupada because look, 5 of them have had difficulties. I think 5. That was in those years. Subsequently, I think one or 2 more may have had difficulty. I can't think straight now because I'm in those years. Those years, 70 after Prabhupada left up to 86, 5 had problems. So the Ritviks are saying Prabhupada could not have possibly appointed them as gurus because he would not appoint people as gurus who are not qualified. And so none of us are qualified. And therefore, he never intended those people who were initiating on his behalf, he never intended them to become gurus. He just intended them to continue initiating on his behalf, even after he left. And they would always be Prabhupada disciples. And that way, we would not have any unqualified gurus, and we would have the pure devotee guru. You've heard this philosophy before. In one sense, it sounds good. Sounds like, well, that would solve a lot of problems, right? We don't have, it's just you would all be Prabhupada disciples. Like, wouldn't that be good, right? Nadia, you could be Prabhupada disciple. I'm Prabhupada disciple. Yeah. And if we're all Prabhupada disciples, then what happens? It's a unified movement. We're listening to his lectures, we're listening to his kirtans, his bhajans, we're reading his books, exactly like it was when Prabhupada was here. Unified movement. And then, okay, we don't have to worry about guru fall downs, right? The problem, there are many problems, but from one devotee has a name for this. He calls it like practical theology something syndrome. I don't know. It's where you create a new theology because something is practical. I mean, that's like that on a practical level, that seems like to solve a lot of problems, although it would create a lot more of dissatisfied people who will be questioning, do I actually have a relationship with Prabhupada? I mean, I've never met him, and I know it's in his books, but he can't tell me if I'm doing something wrong. It would probably, in my mind, create more problems than it could ever solve. In any case, they were running with this philosophy that only someone on Prabhupada's level can be guru. He has to be Mahabhagavat. That's the only pure devotee. There are no other pure devotees. Okay, so that's going on, right? On one hand. Well, that was going on in ISKCON. That illusion was dispelled when they started having trouble. Then the Rifics come in and go, see, we told you they're not pure devotees. And then people started leaving ISKCON thinking, there are no pure devotees in ISKCON. I mean, like, isn't Prabhupada in ISKCON? I mean, no living pure devotees. And very much this idea is very, very strongly preached in Gaudiya Math. You need a living acharya to take shelter of it. You can't just have your guru and he goes, and you need to take shelter. So there were people, Prabhupada's godbrothers and Prabhupada's god nephews, who were very, very advanced devotees. So some devotees started going there to take shelter because they felt that absence of Prabhupada's guidance, that senior pure devotee, and they wanted to find it somewhere. And in ISKCON, you only had godbrothers who were, more or less on your same level. So devotees started going there, and they started saying the same thing. You need shelter of a Mahabhagavat, a pure devotee. You don't have that in ISKCON. So there was this confusion about pure devotee. So it's kind of like going round and round and round until more or less today, I don't know if everybody understands this, but more or less today, we understand there are different kinds of pure devotees, right? So you're a pure devotee, you're a pure devotee, you're a pure devotee, I'm a pure devotee, she's a pure devotee, he's a pure devotee, if we serve purely, right? Otherwise, why would Prabhupada say, I want you all to become guru? Because, if you have a bunch of people that are not sincere, whose motive is to get something from ISKCON, they can't become guru. They'll ruin everything. But as we said, Prabhupada saw, I have these disciples who are so sincere. they'll do whatever I say, and they'll do it earnestly. And that's why Prabhupada sent them around the world, because if they weren't earnest and sincere, he wouldn't have trusted them to open temples and make devotees. And effectively, if you go out and open a temple, you're kind of a guru for all the new people who come, because you're giving the classes, you're guiding them. Okay, you can be better, they're better gurus, more qualified gurus. So it kind of went around in that circle. Still today, you will find in Gaudiya Math more emphasis on the Mahabhagavat pure devotee. And sometimes they will say, there are no pure devotees in ISKCON. Or then they might say, well, actually, Gaur Govinda Maharaj was a pure devotee. Or they might say, well, actually, Radhanath Swami is a pure devotee. You know, they might give in here or there, you know, to a few. But so you'll still hear this today. Does that make sense to you? Give you some history, yeah. So it's gone in this complete circle to come back to Rupa Goswami, Anyabhilashita Shunyam, Jnana Karmada Navritam. Pure devotional service means you serve without trying to get something from Krishna, either to become God, or to become God spiritually by merging into him, or to become God by being successful materially and achieving great material opulence in that way. If you serve without those desires, that's considered pure devotional service, and you're considered a pure devotee in the broadest sense of the word. I'll get to your questions in a minute, and something else comes to mind. When you read some of the things that Prabhupada said about leading kirtan, specifically, he mentioned also drama. He said that those in the drama, those leading the kirtan, must be pure devotees. He said otherwise, the bhava, the emotion, the mood, it's not going to come through if the person singing or the person acting is not a pure devotee. So now, what did Prabhupada mean here by pure devotee? He said, well, you're chanting 16 rounds, you're following 4 regular principles. In other words, you're living in the temple. In those days, this was mostly referring to people living in or near the temple, or specifically initiated devotees who were chanting 16 rounds, following 4 principles. So if they are actors, if they do kirtan, they're sincere, they follow principles, they don't smoke cigarettes after the kirtan, they don't go start hugging girls after the kirtan. If they follow principles, if they're sincere, it will have potency, people will feel it, and our movement will be successful. It's interesting in the story with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Prakashananda Saraswati, if you've read that story in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is true that Mahaprabhu convinced them with arguments, but Prabhupada said he also convinced them with his beauty, and he also convinced them with his humility, because he came in very humble and he listened to them, and he sat next to where you wash your feet, and he said, oh, you know, you are superior, because he was in an inferior, quote unquote, sannyas sampradaya. That's why Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya instructed Lord Chaitanya. He said, well, you know, your sampradaya of sannyas, it's inferior, so I have to help you. So Mahaprabhu took this position, I am inferior. And his effulgence, we can compare his effulgence to like our qualities, the beauty of the Vaishnava. So that is how we're successful. When Prabhupada saw his disciples, he said, you are all bright-faced. People say we're bright-faced. We are effulgent. You follow these principles, you'll be effulgent. So therefore, go around the world. And it happened. We were successful, right? So isn't that pure? Isn't that purity? So then, as I said, we had this problem, and so many devotees not so many, but some left ISKCON thinking, oh, there are no pure devotees in ISKCON. You have to go outside and find the pure devotee, take shelter and take guidance from him. Now, I'm not saying that wasn't helpful for some. Some devotees just didn't fit into ISKCON, but as a general policy, that was not what Prabhupada recommended. I was going to say something. I forgot because I got sidetracked. It'll come back. With something that was, I think, something to the effect of this argument that there are no pure devotees in ISKCON. But anyway, that was a different way from which the way Prabhupada saw it. And therefore, as I said, he said, pure devotees in the dramas, pure devotees doing the kirtans, everybody pure devotee, you're purely following, then it has potency. All right, we'll go to your questions and then maybe I'll remember if there was another point. Okay, I'm going to go to the top so I don't miss. So Krishna says, I was just listening to a class of yours on this topic. I think that's the gurus. 8 out of 11 fell down. I think it was 7. Let me count. I don't want to say their names. Counting in order that I remember. Off the top of my head, I can think of 6 out of 11, but I think there's one more. I just can't remember. I'm just talking about the original. I can't remember. Anyway, so Krishna Garshini says, if I am wrong, please correct me, but I think that seeing a guru as a pure devotee may create lots of problems because a disciple have unreasonable expectations towards guru. Not if he sees it the way we're discussing. Thinking that he is Superman who will never fall. Well, if you understand you're a pure devotee, then there are different levels, then that would prevent that. My husband experienced fall down of his guru, and since then, me and my husband stopped having unreasonable expectations. Well, especially your husband's former guru really promoted that idea. So that was a problem, yeah. We see our gurus as Madhyam-adhikari who are doing their best. But there's a risk they may also have some problems in their spiritual life. Yeah, I'm writing a paper on this, actually. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know if it will be well received by some, but I'm writing a paper on the realities of guru and disciple. So, it's a little strange if the guru says, I'm a pure devotee. Like, you remember that story? I don't know if you heard this story. Prabhupada was describing Varnashram. So he was saying first class, second class, third class, fourth class. So of course, in Western society, people don't like first class, second, But natural hierarchy is there. I mean, they don't like it, but there is a world champion golfer, there's a world champion boxer, there's a world champion wrestler, there is, the Olympics, there is first place, second place, third place. So from Prabhupada's point of view, it wasn't discrimination, it was just by qualification. So then people were getting upset and they said, well, who do you think you are? What class do you think you're in? And Prabhupada said, I am 5th class because I am servant of the other classes. So, a pure devotee is not going to say, I'm a pure devotee. That would be, he can say, you have to find a pure devotee and take shelter of him. And if he'll say, are you a pure devotee? He'll say, well, according to the Shastra, that you have to decide. I can't tell you. So if someone says, yes, I'm a pure devotee. I mean, sometimes they ask Prabhupada, you've seen Krishna? And he said, yes. Which you could say is an indirect way of saying I'm a pure devotee. But anyway, they asked him. He just gave the honest answer. Yeah, I'm seeing Krishna. But I would be suspect if someone's going around saying, I'm a pure devotee, in the sense that your husband's former guru was doing, because he was doing it a lot. And yeah, so your expectations. Well, what's interesting, I'll say one more thing about this, Krishna question, because in writing this paper on guru-disciple relationship, what becomes obvious is that the dynamics that exist in ordinary relationships, practically all those dynamics are there. The different dynamic in guru-disciple relationship is that the guru is always meant to be in a superior position, and the disciple is always meant to be subservient. And that's how the disciple gets knowledge. It's not that sometimes they don't talk as equals when they're discussing something. It's not that the disciple doesn't bring up questions, but in the ultimate end, the disciple agrees that I will be guided by this person. And whatever decision they make, we can discuss, but what decisions they make, I will follow that. It's not like an ordinary teacher-student relationship in the academic community. There's much more to it. And there's a consciousness and like, I don't know if your academic teachers prayed for you. I don't know if they accepted your karma. And certainly you probably didn't serve them, or most of you probably didn't serve them. So, or subordinate yourself to them outside of the classroom. So, it's a different relationship. So you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. At the same time, you want to be realistic. And so I think we have seen in our movement, too far one direction, too far in the other. He's a pure devotee, can't do anything wrong. And if you see him doing anything wrong, there's something wrong with you. You just don't have transcendental vision. No, but I saw him at 2 a.m. I saw this young, beautiful girl coming out of his apartment, and there was nobody there. But you don't have the vision to see what he was doing. Well, I did see that, and I'm old enough to know that, when a 50-year-old guy spends a few hours alone with a 35-year-old beautiful woman, it probably something was wrong with that picture. No, don't doubt your guru. Okay, so that's swinging way the other way. No, you definitely should doubt that. There's no question. But then, when everything is lined up perfectly, he sets a good example, so on and so forth. And you're like, well, they're not pure devotees, so, can't really have to accept what they say. And then you've taken it to the extreme, right? So as we've spoken many, many times, balance is most important, right? It's somewhere in the middle, obviously, right? So if, you see, the light's been on since 11 p.m. and she's walking out at 3 a.m. and she's, young and beautiful, put two and two together. You're probably 99.999% right to say something's wrong with this picture, right? And to think otherwise would be a huge mistake, right? Now, we have this saying, there's a saying in Bengal, if you see Lord Nityananda go into a liquor shop or even to a brothel, or you shouldn't have any doubt because he's transcendental, obviously, right? Okay. Or even if you see a devotee come out of a bar, you'll probably think he was doing book distribution, unless he's kind of wobbling from side to side. Well, he could be wobbling side to side if he just distributed 50 Bhagavatams, he'd be in ecstasy. But so, like we say, if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and quacks like a duck, it's probably a duck. So if it looks like fall down, it smells like it, tastes like it, probably is, right? But you don't want to jump to conclusion. Well, my Guru Maharaj, he showed up for Mangal Artik at 4:30 and 26 seconds. Who knows what he was doing in those 26 seconds that he was late? Maybe he was on the phone with his girlfriend. So if you're going that degree, that's insanity, which, believe it or not, some people have gone that far. So I think you understand what I'm saying, right? And the point is, who's guru? Somebody who can help you. If this person can help you, he's guru. And it doesn't have to be the only one, right? You can have so many gurus. Like a lot of people say, how do I know who is a guru? And I would say, who's helping you? Like, who in your life is helping you come closer to Krishna? And you think, oh, this one, that one, this one. Or maybe no, maybe all of them. Or I mean, who's helping you the most? Like significantly, like who is that person? Like if you think, if I didn't have that person, I'd be a mess spiritually. If there is such a person, like without them, I don't know where I'd be. I wouldn't be where I am today without them. Oh, that's probably your guru, that person or those persons, right? So balance is important. So we don't want to minimize the reality of the power of a guru. We just don't want to create a fictitious guru, then you have fictitious expectations. Then you get let down. Yeah, okay. Let's see what else we have here. Christy says, if I understood correctly, Prabhupada didn't appoint those 11 gurus. He didn't appoint anyone to give initiations. He said all the disciples should become gurus. How will it work with second generation? Well, you know, the problem, Christy, if you talk to 100 Prabhupada disciples, you'll probably get 11 different stories on this. I think it's a moot point in the sense, like you say here, Prabhupada wanted all his disciples to be gurus. So how it started, did he want those 11 to initiate? That's generally the understanding. Did he, although some people will say, no, he wanted everyone to initiate, he didn't appoint anyone. But it kind of amounts to the same thing, because now everyone who wants to initiate is initiating today anyway. So there's no real restriction. I think part of the problem was that when those 11 did it, they tried to do it like Prabhupada. And that's what created all this doubt. Did he really appoint them, et cetera, et cetera. And they were holding back. They weren't letting others do it. They're very cautious. And they were controlling the GBC in many ways. So everything was wrong. How will it work with the second generation? Will they be appointed by their spiritual masters? Well, once your spiritual master leaves, no. But now there is some resolution with the GBC to allow disciples to initiate in the presence of their spiritual master. So how will that work? The spiritual master may say, I would like you to initiate, or the disciple may go to the guru and say, I would like to initiate. And technically speaking, I don't know if they're going to need their guru's approval, probably, but actually I read the resolution proposed. Well, it used to be a resolution. I don't think there's anything about the guru approving. So if they want to do it, they can. And so when you're spiritual, definitely when you're ready, you can take on disciples. But generally, if your spiritual master is present, you would discuss it with him. And when he leaves, all the disciples can take disciples. But there's a few things you have to do within our movement to be able to do that. But the only thing stopping you would be your own lack of qualification. How can we all be prepared in case they start demanding golden chandeliers and doorknobs in their bedrooms? Well, go to your local GBC and say, I think you need to talk to him. Hopefully this won't happen because we have examples of this happening in other places in the past that created problems. The question you're asking is a question that's being discussed right now, how that would be dealt with if there are deviations. It's an important question. I'm on a few committees that are dealing with this issue. Accountability, having each guru having a few God brothers that they confide in, and those God brothers would help them like that. That's, I think, going to be the best solution. I mean, ultimately, we don't want to manage purity through bureaucracy. We want to manage purity through friendship and affection, where each leader has people he can confide in and people that he trusts who can tell him when he's off and vice versa. That's best. You might have to have some bureaucracy, but just in case things kind of get out of hand and no one can control it. But generally, when you look at all the problems within ISKCON, the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, we just need to be more Krishna conscious, because if we were, we wouldn't have this problem, right? Now, if you go outside of ISKCON into other religious groups, do they have problems resulting from a lack of purity? Yes, yes, yes. So that's ultimately the problem is lack of purity, isn't it? So if we can create environments and situations where our leaders are protected and motivated and inspired, and they have their own groups where they can open up if they're having difficulties, that would be the best, I think, personally. Because purity is what's most important, right? And if each guru had a few God brothers, well, one of Prabhupada's God brothers said, when you become a guru, you should be surrounded by God brothers. He said, because your disciples will praise you, but your God brothers, if you go off, will slap you in the face. So, we all need a good slapping once in a while if we go off, right? If we don't go off, we can get kissed. But if we go off, we may need a slap just to wake us up. So I thought that was good advice. And that was based on his experience. And at that time he said that, it had been, it had been 49 years since Srila Bhaktisiddhanta left. So he had 49 years of experience. So when he said that, I definitely noted that. I was like, that's interesting. How can we all be prepared in case they start demanding golden chandeliers? Okay. Well, you don't have to worry about that in Lithuania because you guys are too poor to buy golden chandeliers. So solve that problem. Mexico, also Russia, Well, unless you're really wealthy, it's not going to be a problem. And I don't think in 2021, there's going to be a lot of demands for golden chandeliers. There might be demands for you to buy Prabhupada's books and distribute them, or donate your money to the temple in Mayapur, or help your local temple, that's for sure. But pretty much, I don't think anyone would actually allow that. The problem is if that guru is isolated, like he's off in the middle of nowhere, some island somewhere with a few disciples, and nobody knows what he's doing, then those things can happen. But hopefully this class will help you. Why she's mentioning golden chandeliers? Well, if you ever go to Italy and you go to Florence, you can ask them, can I see the quarters of the guru that was here in the 1980s? I actually stayed in his room and used his bathroom in there. I think there's golden chandelier in the bathroom, actually. That's probably brass. But anyway, it's all marble, brass. Yeah, I don't think it was gold, but. And I went there in 1982 and he showed me his bathroom. It was like, look at this bathroom. But they all felt that, that should be given to the guru. So I think we've learned our lesson. Anurada says, you were talking about definition of pure devotee with no other desire but to please Krishna. Yes. What about those kirtan leaders that are doing it just to make money? Should they be allowed to play at temples? Well, this is an interesting question, which this is a question where You know, one of those questions, ask 10 devotees, get 10 different answers. So I have different ways of looking at it. It's like, let's say you're organizing a kirtan and you are really good. You're a really good kirtan leader, right? Like, and you have a group and they're really good. And people, you're so good that people want to see you, and you're so good, they would actually pay for you, right? And that money can be used to maintain you. So you can continue doing this and help the preaching in general. It seems to me from a practical point of view, if that person's interest is spreading Krishna consciousness and it's not about money, then there would be nothing wrong with it. The problem is if he's just doing it for money or for fame or to pick up the girls, because there are a lot of girls right now in the yoga scene. You want to find a beautiful girl, become a kirtan leader. What better way could there be? Right? You have to have earrings and tattoos also, and wear really far out clothes and be totally cool if you want to get the most beautiful girls. So if that's what you want, you can do that, right? And certainly that's out there, right? And certainly that motive to do that can happen very subconsciously or very consciously. Or a person could be doing it in total denial that they're doing it. So if, it's like if every kirtan in the city people are paying for, then you're like, okay, well, we can get just as many people if they pay as for free. So, and then, we got to rent a place and pay for it and this and that. Why not? I don't think the money is the problem. I think the motive for money is the problem. Money's never a problem. In fact, one time, Prabhupada said we should charge for our lectures. And I'm trying to remember why he said that. I think, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't remember why. And I don't want to guess. But I think he felt that we weren't being respected or cheapened it to some degree. And then he said, next time we will charge. People are taking it cheaply or something like that. So, nowadays in the yoga scene, Krishnadas comes, sells out a big place, people pay money. So people are used to doing that. So, it's really a decision that has to be made by the organizers. Do we want to make this free? Do we want to charge? What do we want to do? Sometimes you'll get a donor, he'll say, well, I'll give you the money, rent the place. Let's do it. We want to do it free. We want to get more people. Not necessarily will you get more people because it's free. You generally get more people because you know how to advertise and the kirtan is good and the kirtan group has some name. But how will a person who could do kirtan 365 days a year, if he's not getting money and he's married, how's he going to do it? He's got to make some money. So we have to look at that. But is he doing it for the money? No, because like some of the members of the Mayapuris, they have full-time jobs. They don't have to do that. It's not their income, right? So they have to take off from work, go on the road. They're not doing it to make money. And like Vishwambar, and like he does tours of India, there's other ways they can make money. But if he thought, well, kirtan's a good way to make money, let's do that. That would be like a guru saying, like a person saying, I could go into IT, I could do an MBA, or I could become a guru because the guru business in India is quite lucrative. If I could play well, actually, I think I could play the part because I'm a good speaker. I know Sanskrit. I have a nice smile. If I just get branded properly with the right attire and the right kind of YouTube channel, mood, and so forth, I could be a guru. And that'd be a great business. So do you think there are people who think that way? Yeah, there are. All right. Is it wrong to be a guru? No. Does a guru need money to live? Of course, we all do. If a guru is giving 365 days a year to service, will people want to donate to him? Of course they will. Otherwise, how can he give himself? He's got to go out and, do something, paint houses, sell insurance. He's got to do something. So I don't really see it any different. Our sannyasis, they travel the world, people donate. How are they going to travel the world if they don't have money to buy an airplane ticket? So people give them money. Are they traveling to get money? No. And if they're traveling to get money, it's only to get money for a project, a preaching project, not for themselves, not so they can buy a BMW. So it all goes back to motive. That's my personal opinion. I know some people don't have a problem with this, and I know some people do. And they have a problem based on principle, what I believe, which I understand. But I think we have to look at motive also, because I think that's the real issue. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it for money? Because then you could, you could say any preacher, anyone who's given money shouldn't take it. They should just give money, just take the money and give it to the temple president. Don't take it. Which is what Radhanath Swami does. Well, he doesn't need it, but he has people who support him, so he doesn't need it. So whatever donations he gets when he goes to temple, he's the sannyasi. He goes, I don't need it, take it. Fantastic, right? But not everyone's in that situation. A lot of gurus have big projects. They need money for their projects. And of course, we all need money to live. So I think it's similar, personally. That's one of your 11 opinions you're going to get on that topic. But I don't have any reason to believe that Prabhupada would be upset. I have reason to believe that he would be upset if that was your motive. Like, the devotees go out in New York, they do kirtan, little basket, people give money. Are they going out to get money? No, they're going out to share the holy name. Do they need money to live? Of course they do. Right? So, we used to go out on Harinam, right? When we were young devotees. And then we get a crowd, and then we'd give a little talk, and then we go around with baskets, maybe incense, pamphlets, and people would give money. Are we doing kirtan for money? Well, somebody could say, you are. What's the money for? For the temple. Okay, so no one ever thought we couldn't do that. No one ever thought, oh, we're doing kirtan for money. Right? Okay, if you're doing kirtan to pay the monthly payments on your BMW, yeah, that's why you're doing it. Forget it. You're not chanting the holy name. That's not going to benefit anybody, right? Because you want to go out and benefit everybody, so you have to be pure. So if you're chanting for the purpose of helping people, what does it matter if they give money or not? It's good. Isn't it good if they give money? Isn't it better? Don't they benefit? Giving money to a Vaishnava or giving money to a preaching program? Sure, why not? As long as it's not used for sense gratification. One time, the devotee asked Prabhupada an interesting question. They had a business and they were selling incense. And Prabhupada said, the devotee said, Prabhupada, do the store owners who buy our incense benefit? Because there's an exchange of money. And Prabhupada said, it depends what you do with the money. So if you're using the money to preach, they benefit. So, really the argument is, we shouldn't do kirtan for money. What are you doing with the money? That's the point. At least that's the second point. Why are you doing it? Are you doing it to spread Krishna consciousness and help people? And what are you doing the money? If your motive is to spread Krishna consciousness, if your money is being used to spread Krishna consciousness, how could that be wrong? The people benefit by giving money. Is that okay? I will stand up to those 11, whoever they are, and defeat them with my arguments. Yeah. See how humble I am? Wow, I'm so humble. I think I'm always right. But that's my understanding that's my understanding based on understanding how Prabhupada dealt with these things. So it's not my opinion. That's just what I understand how Prabhupada dealt with it. Krishna Karshani says, I personally don't mind the gurus are not perfect. I know they are more advanced than me and they make efforts to give me Krishna. And it's enough for me if my guru would have problems. I would not reject him. I would try to understand him and try to help him. And that's actually what the Shastra says. You would only reject a guru who gives up Krishna consciousness. Of course, sometimes if the guru has difficulty, you could lose faith. You know, we can't control anybody's faith. So, you know, that's another thing, right? But it's a decision you'll have to make. But Shastra says if a guru may have difficulties, sometimes it happens, and he gets back on his feet, and there's no need to give him up unless you've lost faith. So Ananda says, I think having a guru who isn't an Adhikari Mahabhagavat isn't a problem until you have to follow his instructions in order to not commit namaparad. Yeah, having a guru is not a problem until you have to follow his instructions. Okay. You can have all the gurus you want. Yeah, well, that's Ananda. That's kind of like the Western idea, you know. I have a lot of gurus. Do you follow them? Yeah, some I follow a little bit, this and that. You know. I like hearing from them. You know, yeah. And also, you know, sometimes the disciple, it's not like you have to buy. You go into temple gift shop and you buy a adhikari meter. So you different, you know, gurus are coming, or different potential gurus are there, and you bring up the adhikari meter, all right? So what would you do? This is hypothetical, you know, we'll make a little play about this, or a little movie. What would you do if somebody came to the temple and they gave a class which revealed things to you that were so important for your Krishna consciousness, things you never really understood? They clarified it. They opened up you to new ideas. And you're feeling like, oh my Govinda, I never felt this inspired before. This is amazing. I've never understood Krishna consciousness on this level. And you went up to them and your adhikari meter said they were Kanistha. What would you do? Oh, no, I can't accept him as my guru. He's a Kanistha. I don't think so. I think you would say, I think this is the one. I've never heard anybody like it, right? And you would take your meter and go, it must be broken, because to me, he's a Mahabhagavat. Because unless he's a Mahabhagavat, how could I have been affected by that? Does it really matter at that point? If you think he's a Mahabhagavat or a Madhyam or a Kanishta, does it really matter? Because what matters is that he's helping you advance, or someday she is helping you advance. Isn't it? Isn't that practical? Isn't that reality, right? So I have listened to many, many classes, as you have, that are quite technical in analyzing these things from the point of view of Shastra. And the danger is sometimes if you get too philosophical and analytical, you kind of lose touch with reality. Have you noticed that? It's like you can't figure out reality anymore. It's too philosophical. It's like Madhyam this, Uttama that, but in this situation, but it's that, and this Shastra, and this verse, and that, and you're like your head is spinning, you know. It's like, I just need to find a guru, you know, like, you know. And so sometimes we have to, you know, be a little less analytical and philosophical and add some practicality to it. And, you know, Prabhupada said, well, if you're a Kanishta or Madhyam, there's no problem. Your guru can be a Kanishta or Madhyam. And then he might say, but what if I come to this point where I have to evolve further and he's only a Madhyam and I'm ready to go to the Uttama? Okay, so find a Uttama Siksha guru if that's what you need. Not a problem. Once I was talking to my friend from France. Who are we listening to? Is this still Ananda?
Sorry, Maharaj, for this confusion. There was a question from Krishna Karshani and then about this girl from France, and this is my comment. Sorry for
Okay.
this confusion.
Okay, once I was talking to my friend from France. She's one of the leaders in a French evangelical church, and she said they have absolutely the same problems that we have. They have the same questions and issues. Yeah, every group has, because we're human beings trying to be transcendental. So naturally, we have these problems. And when you analyze these problems, it's so clear that the solution is we all become pure. We all become humble. We live without ego. We live with compassion. But this is like, it's like, if we can just do this, and we live with honesty, we live with integrity, we live with devotion, dedication, purity, that's the solution, isn't it? I heard you talked about it in your lectures, the golden knobs in the bathrooms. Oh, just wondered, could it turn the wrong way again since we haven't had? I don't think so, but anything's possible. It's unlikely, but not impossible. That's my prediction. I would not be surprised if we hear about it somewhere, but I think in today's ISKCON, it would get remedied fairly quickly. Or, I mean, what can you do? You have a very wealthy disciple and, he buys you a house somewhere. So, I think that's happened with some sannyasis, and they would always say, it's not my house, it's his house. They would never say it's my house, even though he bought it for them. And so he buys you this house where you can preach from, and he put in brass, not gold. All right, gold plated, right? What are you going to do? It's too late. He already did it. So, doesn't mean the guru approves of it. I remember Prabhupada said we should charge for books because when people don't pay for something, they don't appreciate it. Yes, he did say that. That's one of the reasons he didn't want us to distribute books for free. Yes. He was later asked about it. He said, well, if you pay for the books, you can give them for free. But then he mentioned they do appreciate it if they pay for it. Chairate, if services were valued, then I think a lot of devotees wouldn't need to charge in the first place. The reality is, as you said, Gurudev, we have to sustain devotees somehow. It isn't realistic. In other words, she's saying that, if the Brahmins were valued, people would just donate, so I wouldn't have to ask, right? I think, we put out all our courses online, and we said we just told devotees we'll just give donations for them. And it is a lot of work to put out a self-paced online course. Believe me, it takes, I don't know how, when you have a volunteer group, it takes months and months, sometimes years. That forgiveness course didn't get out for about 3 years after it was filmed, seriously. And all the material had already been written before it was filmed. That didn't even include writing the material. And so we said, let's just give it to the devotees. They can give donations. And very few actually donated. So, like she's saying, now we're thinking, if we're going to continue doing this, we're going to have to start hiring people to do this. It's a lot of work. We're going to have to ask for some small donation because people aren't giving. So sometimes you're forced to do these things. And the disciples naturally support their gurus, right? I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be here with you if I had a job, right? Today I made an experiment. So the purpose of this class is send in your donations today. Send in your cards and letters. Like a Christian and evangelist, after their lecture, then they have the video, how much money they need for their new jet airplane because they have to fly to Africa to preach like that. I won't do that. Don't worry. I have Today I made an experiment. I was looking at every living entity and trying to see Paramatma in their hearts, the way it was painted in our books. And it was such an amazing experience. I was so happy and calm all day. There was so much love in my heart. And I thought if we all tried to do that every day, then we'll have no fights in our movement. Yeah. Who said that?
That's me, Maharaj.
Oh, that's you. Yeah. All right. Easier said than done, but it's true. Yeah. Okay. That was Prabhupada's solution. Krishna consciousness is the solution, right? We're in the material world. We are conditioned souls. We have a human nature. We have a psychology. We have desires. We have needs, etc. We see things differently, and we require a high level of Krishna consciousness to be able to work through these things. And that's why we find these problems common. And we don't want to be common. We want to show ourselves in the world that we're different. And if we're like everyone else, then that's not kind of letting Prabhupada down. He had greater expectations for us, that's for sure. That this process would make us better. Sardiya says, when I visited Bhakti Swarup Damodar Goswami's temple in Radhakurnd, I saw Maharaj's room. It was very small and simple, with minimal furniture. This really impressed me, as Maharaj was a world-renowned scholar, and surely he had funds to live more opulently, but it seems that he chose to live as simple as possible, and definitely inspiring, no question. No question. And of course, the guru can also not necessarily has to accept the opulence the disciple gives, because the guru may say, I don't want to live like that. I want to live simply. I was told that Radha Swami, even though he's offered a bed, when he's traveling, he sleeps on the floor. That's his preference. And as he said, he gives the money back that's donated to him to the temple, because he's living the life of a renowned sannyasi. That's how he prefers to live. Yeah, so. How can we understand some ISKCON sannyasis, gurus, living in more luxury than middle-class devotees? I understand that sannyasi gurus may need a place to live, but some have houses, apartments in more than one place, which is way bigger and more opulent than the homes of the average devotees who live there. Uh-oh. Sardiya Rasa, you want me to get into trouble now by answering this question? I think the answer to this question, Sardiya Rasa, is ask them why. Go up and ask them. Hey, Maharaj, I had a question for you. Your house is nicer than mine. Like, what's up? You're supposed to be renounced. I don't get it. Like, this doesn't seem right. Like, what's your I need an explanation right now. Otherwise, I'm leaving this going. I cannot speak for others, but I know God brothers who are sannyasis who are very, how should I say, they love renunciation. They just love it. Anyway, I can answer your question. That was a joke. I will answer your question. They love renunciation. They travel sometimes like a little bag on their shoulder, like that's all they have. You give them a nice room. They don't need a nice room. Like I said, they sleep on the floor. They'll be up very early when it comes for prasadam. Just give me some khichdi and chapatis. That's all I want. And I know many of them that are like that. And so what you say is true, but not true for everyone. I had a godbrother who, when I was visiting him, he brought me into his room, and his room was really nice, nicer than your room, Nadia, nicer than the room I'm sitting in, nicer than Tanya's house, nicer than Pi's house. Well, I can't tell how nice your house is, but I'm guessing. Nicer than Christie's room. That's like, really like antique, beautiful. I mean, it looked like antique furniture. It wasn't antique. It was new, made antique. Big bed, beautiful paintings, carpet. And the first thing he said, well, it has to be nicer than not his room because he doesn't have one. Right. So, and the first thing he said is, he said, I do so much austerity in managing, I have to have a nice room to be able to do it. So he said, my austerity is managing. That's where I do my austerity. And this is like where I go back just so I can recoup and so I can go out and do that service. So he, and that same devotee, I was with him. And once we had lunch with one of those very renounced sannyasis, like one of those, everything you own is like on a book bag on your shoulder and you travel the world that way and you've got like one pair of sandals, like that. Someone like Mahavishnu Swami is traveling around the world. You can imagine he probably has hardly anything with him. He doesn't need much. 2 dhotis, 2 kurtas, a pair of shoes, his Bhagavad Gita and his sweater and, his japa beads, and a toothbrush. So, so this same sannyasi that had showed me his room, his really beautiful room, after we had lunch and that renounced, very austere sannyasi left, he said to us, he said, I wish I could live like him. He said, but I can't because I don't have that nature. So, everybody has their nature, but that I wouldn't say that other sannyasi who lived in that nice room wasn't renounced. It's just his renunciation came in a different way. He would go to Vrindavan. He would live, spend many months there in renunciation, staying up all night on the Ekadasi, fasting. It would come out in different ways. So I think we have to see it that way. This is what this sannyasi needs to be able to manage all the responsibilities he has. He needs some facility like that. And I think also we have to understand is that sometimes their disciples just give them these things. They didn't ask for it. Like, here, Guru Maharaj, we bought you a house in Vrindavan. Like, whoa. Like, if you buy me a house in Vrindavan, it would be hard for me to say, no, I don't want it. I mean, especially if you already bought it. Maybe if you're going to buy it, we could discuss it. Say, no, I don't go there that much. And, but I live in Mayapur. So if you would say, well, we want to buy you a place in Mayapur. Okay, save money. I could use that money elsewhere that I would have had to spend to get the house. I live in Mayapur half my life. Okay, it makes sense. And then all of a sudden I come to Mayapur and there's like this mansion. They go, oh, Guru Maharaj, my uncle Fred, he died and left me $300 million. So we built you a mansion. I'm like, why'd you build me a mansion? It's like everyone in my, you see Mahatma Prabhu's mansion? I'm like, what happened to him? So sometimes it's like that. The disciples just, they just built something for their Guru Maharaj, we heard that the disciples of Radhanath Swami bought a house for him in Chicago, and it's the house he grew up in. They bought him back that house. And I was thinking, hey, somebody bought me back my house. It's a 20-minute walk from the LA temple. Anuradha was there. I showed her where it was about 20 minutes, more or less. But it's 5 minutes by car. I calculated under 5 minutes, maybe 4 from Mangalarti. It's really close. I was like, hey, someone wants to buy me that house. That would be nice. Right. It's only about $1 million, right? Or maybe more now. So if you're interested. Yeah. So But at the same time, probably if someone offered to do that, I would say that's not a good use of money. Personally, I would say that. I think Radhanath Swami must be in ecstasy right now because he's not traveling for the first time in 50 years. And he's in his house. Well, that would be like, I'm transcendently envious of him. It sounds nice. And he's in his house eating his khichdi and 2 chapatis and sleeping on the floor. You should know that, right? So we have to know that also, right? So sometimes the disciples will do these things for their guru. It's like the guru doesn't ask for it. It's like, hey, Guru Maharaj, we bought that house you grew up in. We bought it for you. No way. Yeah, we want you to stay there. Yeah. Now what do? Well, they already own it. So, of course, you could tell them to sell it, this and that. So we have to see it that way. And as the Shastra says, the main thing is bhakti. So we have to see their bhakti, not how, not so much what they have, but how much of their life they're giving. I think that's how we have to see it. Right? And I think also, there's a lot of devotees are, more renounced than you think, because some of them grew up in extremely wealthy families. So, thinking, look at that house. And the devotee says, hey, that was the house our maid lived in. Our maid had a house that size. For us, that's like the quarters for the maids, and the gardeners. So that's how they grew up. So, it's also relative, for you may think that's something amazing, but for them, it's like, oh, we grew up in great opulence in our family. So this is not much. So there's so many ways of looking at it. Yeah. Anuradha said, I told her, I'll be happy taking oats for breakfast every day. And we're trying to cook different kind of dishes. Yeah. And oats for breakfast, khichdi and chapatis for lunch. I'm good to go. And when I get really austere, you don't have to cook the oats. You just give me raw oats and some almond milk or some yogurt, as they say in Mexico, yogurt. And I'm good to go. And all the disciples are like, okay, they give me the oatmeal, and then they give me 20 things around the oatmeal. I'm like, why can't you just give me the oatmeal? And they give me the chapatis and the khichdi and 3 other sabjis and this and that. Like, I don't want it. Then somebody comes in, look at Mahatma Prabhu. Look at him. Look at how he's eating, 20 preparations for breakfast. And they don't know that was the disciples that did it. I just wanted the oatmeal. So sometimes you have to understand that. So that's my answer. And now we have to officially end class.
Raj, there are 2 questions from Krishna Karshina. Should I save them for the next class?
Probably, because I could
minutes.
only answer Krishna Karshina. I only have 1 minute to answer them.
You missed them. They are a little bit higher in the chat.
I kind of answered the question.
Okay.
You said the sannyasi with a nice room sounds for me like justification for fulfilling desire of living. Yeah, back in the 80s, definitely. Yeah, for sure it was. Devotees are afraid they'll commit an offense to holy name. They disobey Guru's instructions and maybe creating the worry. Yeah. Don't worry so much. My last instruction to all of you, don't worry so much. Just love Krishna and don't worry so much. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.